I always like to start a bit early, especially on long topics like tonight's topic. Welcome to the Condor DM show. It's a special tonight focused on Greyhawk. TSR's Greyhawk, where the an interesting setting built through play. Well, you'll see. I'll go through everything. The birth of Greyhawk right up until pretty much the end of TSR with it. I'll cover everything. Just going to give some people some time to roll in, right? Before I officially start in on the topic tonight. Just, always start early on these special nights. I got so much to cover with the world of Greyhawk. There's so much. And it was, it took me a while to decide what order I wanted to do things in, like how I wanted to cover tonight. I'll give you some idea of my lineup. This is my hope to cover everything here. So as far as Greyhawk, the birth, the city of Greyhawk, politics, deities, Castle Greyhawk, the Temple of Elemental Evil, I ooze. We'll get to that. The Circle of Light, and then early versus later Greyhawk. So it's just like, what was Greyhawk like at the end of TSR compared to where it starts, like what it becomes by the time it's coming out, and what that is compared to a later version of that. This Saturday, I'll be covering an interesting game that is made with the 3rd edition of D&D. But there's a unique reason I'm covering it. It has to do with Diablo 2. And it was originally being made as an AD&D 2nd edition game for Diablo, like using the AD&D 2nd edition rules. But this is during the time TSR is, being sold to Wizards of the Coast. So the crossover, it means that they change the work and make it into a 3rd edition product. This has to do with Diablo 2. I've asked a lot of people about this game, and it's like a forgotten gem or a forgotten thing people have forgotten about. I think it's To Hell and Back or something like that, and there's some other name for it. I got it in the research. I just forget it off the top of my head. But it will be, I won't say what that is, but the name for it that would have been called if it was made with AD&D 2nd edition. That was Diablo 2. Now, there's only so much on that, so I'm covering 2 topics on Saturday night, which is the second part is the Council of Worms, right? Where, they were doing something interesting where you could play a dragon in D&D. Yeah, they had a whole aging system, a mechanic set up, all for playing a dragon. So yeah, that's tonight. I hope the order I've chosen is going to tell you some things. There's some things I have to mention, like there's a person you'll hear about a few times before I detail out exactly who he is. A guy named called I Ooze. Well, that's one of the many ways you can say his name. There's at least 3 ways I know people say his name. I'm going to choose to use the I Ooze version. That's what I call him, but others use other ways of saying his name. We'll go over exactly what that is when we get there. But Greyhawk is so big, and there's so much. Yet to understand Greyhawk, I think I have this covered start to finish. But there are finer details from the modules to other concepts in between the start of it and later edition that I would say, if you want to know more about that, go to a YouTube channel. I'll probably link it later. The Greyhawk Grognard, right? And he covers all these other details. Now, it just takes a little bit longer, going through a lot more videos with him to take all this stuff in. What I'm doing tonight is covering Greyhawk start to finish in these details in one package. So in one sitting, you can pretty much know everything you need to know. If you want to know the finer details of Greyhawk beyond what I'm going to mention here, again, Greyhawk Grognard does great coverage on this, and he wants to keep Greyhawk alive, in some sense, right? That's why he's very passionate about that setting. that gimmick. And that's great. I'll give it a bit of support here as best I can. But really, I'm just talking about this is a part of my package this year to cover old school, right? Greyhawk is classic, old school. So you know what? I think we're ready to go, right? The birth of Greyhawk. Now, note again, I only do TSR. Greyhawk is not just a campaign setting, it is the first living D&D world. Before published settings, before boxed worlds, before official lore, there was a basement game in Wisconsin. And that's where this begins. The Seed. A basement in Lake Geneva, 1972 to 1973. Greyhawk was born at the table of Gary Gygax in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Inspired by Dave Arnes's Blackmore campaign, built originally as a dungeon beneath a ruined castle, designed to test and expand what would become Dungeons and Dragons. At first, there was no world of Greyhawk. There was only Castle Greyhawk. Players descended level by level. Monsters, traps, rival adventurers. It was competitive, dangerous, and heavily influenced by wargaming logic. There was still pre-TSR D&D. This was still pre-TSR D&D. So we're talking about stuff they're doing before you officially have a product, a finishing. The dungeon was the focus. The world came later. The first characters and why they matter. Greyhawk produced many of the earliest iconic PCs. Mordekainen, Bigby, Tensor, Robbie Lar, Eric's cousin. These were not fictional lore pieces. They were real player characters. When you see spells like Mordekainen's magnificent mansion or Bigby's crushing hand, you're seeing remnants of actual table play from 1973 to 1975. That matters. Greyhawk wasn't written first, it was played first. Oh, I hear that, Stephen Kennedy. Yep, I love me some Greyhawk as well. Again, I was happy to do this, but it's what order do you cover the important pieces? Again, I think I'm doing this okay, because so many things are good to know before you get to other parts. But there's a few things like that Iuz character that you'll probably hear me mention once or twice without a lot of detail about who that is before we finally get to him, right? From dungeon to world, mid-late 1970s, as AD&D exploded, Gygax needed more than a dungeon. He needed a setting to organize politics, structure nations, provide context for wars, support tournament modules. So the area around the castle expanded into Flanness, part of the larger continent called Auric. This became the world of Greyhawk. The setting slowly evolved through home campaign play, convention tournament modules, early TSR adventures like TGD series, etc. Greyhawk became the default backdrop of early AD&D. Without being heavily explained, it was assumed, not over-explained. A lot of assuming back in the day. That's part of old school. People know what I mean. Like it's not everyone's holding your hand saying this is exactly how you do something right away, right? It's a lot of, man, all right, we think you got this, right? 1980, the first official publication. In 1980, TSR released World of Greyhawk Fantasy World Setting. This was a slim folio with a stunning Darlene map, political summaries of nations, DDs, timeline notes, cultural outlines, minimal fluff, dense structure. Then in 1983, it expanded into a box set edition. Greyhawk was now official, But here's the key. It still felt like a referee's world, like the Dungeon Master's world. It did not feel novelized or over scripted, like some of the later things, like settings like Dragonlance, for example. The tone of early Greyhawk. Greyhawk is not heroic fantasy in the modern sense. It is sword and sorcery influenced, morally gray, politically fragmented, harsh and pragmatic. Its DNA includes Howard style grit, Moorcock style cosmic struggle, war game logistics, medieval feudal realism. Alignment existed, but nations were messy, heroes were flawed, wizards were dangerous. This wasn't sanitized epic fantasy, it was competitive adventuring culture turned into geopolitics. Oh, I hear that. I have some stuff I have stored away that I don't want to like damage and I haven't used in a while, but I have some of this stuff put away. Put away safely. Not everything, but I have a few really collector items, I would call them. Key designers in the TSR era. While Gygax was the architect, others contributed during the TSR years. Rob Kuntz, major contributor to early Castle Greyhawk material. Len Lakofka, Lindor Islands material. Frank Metzner helped with later TSR development. James M. Ward, Greyhawk adjacent contributed. He contributed there. After Gygax left TSR in 1985, Greyhawk continued under TSR control, but the later, we'll just say for now, here's what we'll say at the end of this. Greyhawk began as Gygax World. That there'll be some changes to that later. I'm not going to cover that now. I have a whole section on this later. We'll go a bit more into it then. Why Greyhawk matters historically. Greyhawk is the first sustained D&D campaign world, the testing ground for AD&D mechanics, the origins of many spell names and magical traditions that you know now in D&D, the template for future campaign settings. Before Forgotten Realms, before Dragonlance, before Dark Sun, Greyhawk was the home game that became official, and that is the origin, and that origin never fully leaves it. It is the sort of starting point, the original setting for Dungeons and Dragons. The core identity. Greyhawk is player-driven in origin, dungeon-first in structure, politically grounded, less story scripted than later settings, designed by a wargamer, not a novelist. It feels like a campaign you could actually run, not a novel world where you're afraid to touch. So important. Greyhawk feels gamey. Like it's when you're going to play in Greyhawk, you feel like you're going to play a game. The mentality that you hear people that they're going, well, we are storytellers, right? Or we come together for a story. It's like Greyhawk reminds you powerfully, this is a game. And it's almost like how it reminds you is this. It gives you the information for the game without caring about how you would use that for storytelling. And that's obvious. You get grounded information, which is just like game shit you would use. And you're like, yeah, okay, that's good to know for in case we do this. Right? For the game, right? That's the mentality of Greyhawk. It just, the way it's put together, it reminds itself. This opinion note, I want to put it this way. This part's my opinion, but I really feel this is true. And I heard them sort of talk about this is the gamey thing. On Dragon's Foot, I asked if that's exactly how Gary felt about it. He agreed with me. It reminds him that this is a game. That's what Greyhawk does. It's really focused on the game. So he did have the opinion, and I never heard anybody ever speak against that. So yeah, I really stand on that. I really think Greyhawk is that reminder that D&D is a game, and then like a story emerges from what you do, be it good or bad, stupid, interesting. The city of Greyhawk. Okay, so I decided, after giving you sort of the birth and the seed and how it got started in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, I decided I'd start right away on the city of Greyhawk, power center of flawedness. When TSR presented Greyhawk in the World of Greyhawk fantasy world setting and the 1983 box set later, the city of Greyhawk wasn't written as a capital of empire. It was something more dangerous. It was a neutral city with money, influence, adventurers, and leverage. That makes it the most important political node in flawedness. Like it's politically, it's powerful. And we're going to go more over that now. Political structure, oligarchy, not monarchy. Greyhawk is a free city. It is ruled by an elected Lord Mayor. The directing oligarchy is made up of guild leaders, merchant powers, elite stakeholders. This matters. Unlike Ferunde or Niron, authority here is economic, institutional, contractual. Power flows through guild charters, trade agreements, and mercantile alliances, not divine right. It's closer to Venice than to Camelot. Again, it's more old school, leaning into realistic simulation, and there's, no matter how much fantasy we put into these games, old school nerds are the type that, especially the designers, would still be like the rest of us. And they would lean into this realism, and realism was always an attractive piece. It makes the fantasy or what you're doing relatable, and it's easier to simulate stuff people understand. It's common sense, and coming from a war gamer, it makes sense. That part, my opinion. So after the closer to Venice than Camelot comment, the rest is just what I think. It's my opinion. Geographic advantage. We're back onto the facts. Mm-hmm. The river and the road, Greyhawk's placement is not accidental. So the river and the road, Greyhawk's placement is not accidental. It sits along the Salinitan River near the Nerdiv. Some names in old school stuff that there's so many different ways to say them. It doesn't always come across that well when I'm trying to say them. But it's along a certain specific river near some other locations at a crossroads of eastern and central Flawedness. Trade routes, that means river commerce, caravan routes. So these are areas where boats are going to go through trading. It's also a place where there's just roads going through this area. So caravan routes, river commerce, access to multiple political spheres. Trade is the lifeblood. Whoever controls Greyhawk influences the movement of wealth across the center of the continent. And wealth means soldiers. The adventuring economy in Greyhawk, in the city of Greyhawk. This is where Greyhawk becomes uniquely D&D. Castle Greyhawk looms nearby. The ruins draw the treasure hunters, mercenaries, scholars, criminals. That creates a constant inflow of gold, magic items, exotic goods, information. The city becomes a market for recovered magic. Other realms might have wizards. Greyhawk has a wizard supply chain. That's a powerful center. Strategic neutrality. Greyhawk survives by staying officially neutral. It does not openly declare allegiances to Ferunde. It does not submit to Niron. It does not openly align with AD&D. But neutrality is leverage. When wars happen, and they do, Greyhawk profits from supply contracts, hosts diplomats, becomes espionage ground. It is politically valuable because everyone needs it, right? Again, this is the neutral, we play neutral type of gimmick. Guild power is shadow authority. Okay, the real strength of Greyhawk isn't its walls, it's its guild network. Merchant guilds, thieves guilds, craft guilds, wizardly circles, even groups like the Circle of Eight, associated with Mordenkainen, which we'll get to later, orbits Greyhawk's sphere of influence. This creates a layer a layered power dynamic: public government, private influence, arcane oversight, criminal understructure. Few cities in the TSR era settings feel this institutionally dense. Like it's like a city packed with stuff to do, packed with things to encounter. There's so much going on here. Like it becomes a game. Just playing politics around this place becomes a game in itself, right? You can experience D&D in many unique ways that you wouldn't expect in a setting like Greyhawk. Even though it's initially made more for gaming, it just fills the place up with possibilities. Military capacity. Greyhawk is not a conquering power, but it's not defenseless. It maintains a city watch, professional soldiers, defense walls, river patrols, and more importantly, it can hire mercenaries instantly because mercenaries are already there. That's what an adventurer-rich city provides: rapid militarization compatibility. Right? They always have people around that they can pay right away. Hey, take a weapon, get on the wall, fight first, please. They're always packed with mercenary groups and people looking for this type of work, and they are sort of the center for that. Economic weaponization. Here's the deeper political layer. Greyhawk doesn't need to invade. It can cut trade routes, influence tariffs, control magical markets, disrupt mercenary contracts. In a fragmented Floness, economic influence may matter more than the land. That makes Greyhawk less flashy than IOOs. IOOs we'll get to later, but arguably more stable long term, right? And they're a bit of wickedness, if you want to call it that. Why Greyhawk works as a power center compared to other TSR cities. This is not theocratic like Valuna, not imperial like AD&D, not militarized like IOO's domain, not feudal like Ferunde. It's cosmopolitan, pragmatic, transactional. It feels like a city that could exist in a late medieval trade network. That realism gives it weight. Again, this is going back to leaning a bit more into realism than fantasy. This happens a lot. Enjoy the fantasy, but there's always that real, especially from the wargaming mindset that keeps peeking in with the simulation part of how our minds like to enjoy these games to a point, especially in the old school, I mean. Greyhawk represents the middle path of a setting. It is not holy, not tyrannical, not heroic, not doomed. It survives through competence and profit, and that is very much in the line of early Greyhawk's grounded tone. The city of Greyhawk isn't powerful because it conquers. It's powerful because everyone depends on it. It sits at a crossroads of trade, magic, and adventuring. And it is and in a fractured continent, that's it. The city that controls money controls the board, and Greyhawk controls the money. It's like using neutrality in a way that's effective for the place to get ahead. Successful, put it that way. The Floness, political structure. So we're going to focus on, that was the city. We got the seed, the birth, the city. Now we're going to look at the overall political structure of Floness, which is really important. When TSR presented Greyhawk, formerly in the World of Greyhawk fantasy world setting, and later the 1983 box set, the Floness was not written like a novel world. It was written like a strategic briefing document. It reads almost like a medieval CIA report. The big picture: post-imperial fragmentation. At the core of Floness is one political fact: the Great Kingdom collapsed. The Great Kingdom, the AD&D, once dominated Eastern Floness by the 580s. See why? It is corrupt. It is tyrannical. It is splintering. From that decay comes breakaway states: North Kingdom, South Province, Duchy of Ernst, County of Ernst, Iran. The Falanus is the most imperial world, not a rising empire. So it is a post-imperial world. It's getting away from empire. That's the point. It's breaking off from empire. That alone separates Greyhawk from later high fantasy settings. Major power blocks. Politically, the Flonesse divides into rough spheres of influence. The Eastern Imperial Remnants, the Great Kingdom, AD&D, North Kingdom, and the South Province. Theme, decadence, lawful evil drift, noble hosts rotting from within. The Overking of AD&D is technically supreme, but in practice, authority is regional and unstable. So it's almost like you're hanging on to what was the Great Kingdom at one point. And it's run as, and it's people are killing each other, people backstabbing, nobody trusts each other. It's decaying like that. The central buffer states, Niran, Ferunde, Valuna, the Earth states, these are the civilized kingdoms, but they are not unified. They compete diplomatically, economically, and militarily. Niran in particular represents a weakened but lawful successor trying to survive between Iuz in the north and AD&D in the east. The northern threat. Here sits one of Greyhawk's defining geopolitical tensions, Iuz, the ruler of Empire Iuz, demigod, tyrant, political destabilizer, patron of humanoid tribes. His existence turns the north into a constant powder keg. Ferunde and Valuna exist largely in opposition to him, Iuz. The theocratic sphere. Valuna, Pale, and parts of Ferunde operate with heavy clerical authority. The Pale in particular is rigid and intolerant in the area of religion. Religion in Greyhawk is political. Church influences armies. Clerics influence succession. So this is not a separation of church and state, as you would say. This is a very church is married to the state. The free cities and mercantile powers. The crown jewel, city of Greyhawk, not an empire, not a monarchy, a free city run by oligarchs and guild interest. It's strategically located. It is a strategically located trade hub, adventuring capital, neutral ground. Other semi-independent states can be like Divers or Herby. Greyhawk politics isn't just kings; it's guilds, trade leagues, and mercantile competition. As I've already covered, but it sort of just plays into the politics and religion here. Cultural layers of finesse. Greyhawk politics are rooted in a migration history. The Flan, original inhabitants, scattered, pushed outward. The Oridians, imperial builders, Great Kingdom. The Soul, refugees from a magical cataclysm, reign of the colorless fires. So there is this great cataclysm that happens called the reign of colorless fires, and you get refugees coming from this place. There's what they call the Soul, imperial builders. The Back Lunish, Western survivors of a magical war. Political boundaries reflect this ancient movement, these movements. Greyhawk is ethnically layered, not culturally. How can I say? Not with limitations. It's built up, something in the vein of a Rome, a bit of mix, but there is sort of a founding people that lay claim to that founding of this place. But there is a mix of different people that come together to make up Greyhawk. Military structure. Some of that can be hard, there's so much like the cataclysm, reign of colorless fire. I could cover that, and that's an important detail. I want to mention it out loud, so maybe you want to look into that yourself. that's a whole section in itself. It's very important to some aspects, depending on what you want to know. But overall, it's not that important other than to maybe mention that there was some type of boom. And that's important in Greyhawk. That boom is important. Military structure. Greyhawk nations rely on feudal levies, knightly orders, mercenary companies, humanoid tribal coalitions like IOUs. Standing armies are rare and expensive. So you don't always have these built-in armies to places because it is so costly. That mostly what they do is have small, somewhat military patrols and then ways of calling up more people under circumstances where they need to hire you on the spot to go fight. Hence, mercenary work is pretty extensively easy to get in Greyhawk, right? Most conflicts are border wars, raids, proxy conflicts, noble host feuds. This is low-grade medieval instability, not continent-wide. Say war, like blow-up war. It's not like everything's falling apart. It's just low-grade medieval instability, but it can be maintained, and to a degree it is, right? So it's not like world ending. It's bad practice, but it's almost like it needs to get worse for everything to blow up, for it to become apocalyptic. Alignment as political identity. Unlike later settings, alignment subtly shapes geopolitics. Ferende is lawful good leaning. The Great Kingdom, lawful evil drift. I ooze, chaotic evil. I gotta tell I haven't really. It's like I'm not warning you about this guy properly. Like I say, he's like I ooze. This I ooze guy over here. Oh yeah. He's a bad guy. Pale, lawful, neutral, in its leading, but TSR didn't over-explain this. Alignment influences rulers. It does not dictate cartoonish behavior. That nuance is important. So it doesn't. If you take someone, you start acting sarcastic with them or somewhat like cartoony, that's not what this is. Remember, everything is simulation and real, even in the way they want to look at the personalities of the people and how this is all explored. Everything is sort of under that take it serious context, right? That's the mindset of old TSR D&D. Greyhawk Wars, late TSR era context is important. Though originally relatively stable Cold War map, late TSR escalates tension into the Greyhawk Wars. This redrew borders, strengthened IOUs, weakened Iran, collapsed old assumptions, but originally the finesse was designed as a balanced sandbox of competing mid-tier powers, not a scripted apocalypse. So remember, Greyhawk is made to game in. That's the reality. It's like, how do we make what we do realistic, like extremely realistic? Like it's not silly that you go out and do these type of jobs. It is the thing you do in this place, and it makes sense to go do the job or go do the dungeon crawl or what have you that the game wants you to go do originally. So there is Greyhawk is designed to marry that idea and say, we've created a realistic setting where you would be going out to do this thing. Okay, cool. What makes finesse politically different? Greyhawk politics are decentralized, post-imperial, ethnically layered, religiously influential, economically competitive, militarily fragile. It feels like Europe after Rome fell. Very true. It's not like a single heroic destiny world. It's a setting. Flawless works because no one is fully in control. Empires are collapsing, not rising. Demigods sit next to the dukes. Trade cities compete with the knightly realms. Humanoid hordes are political tools. It is a world in tension, not a world at peace, not a world fully at war. A powder keg. And that's sort of the beautiful part of it. It's always the what if that keeps the place running. Okay. Sorry if that was a little difficult. Some of the stuff, just naming some of those places and going over some of those details, I get a little lost on my notes on the politics are weird. Everything is weird about Greyhawk because everything's not overly explained. So you see something, and some of the comments I'm here, I'm trying to separate my opinions because a lot of it I had to go look and really look to see what they say about it because even later there's slim amounts of knowledge. So there's a lot of statements I'm purposely leaving out and only making statements I know line up with people that really made this stuff, right? So this is what they say about this stuff. That's all I got. And it's a lot, but there's I don't think there's any mistakes here. But if there is, anybody who's alive that knows this stuff or knows the research, they can always correct me if they want to. So Greyhawk, deities, and religion. And I'm sorry about some of the pronunciation of names. I try to look some of this up. I get tired of it sometimes. Like, it's, reading it's one thing, saying it out loud is another. There's multiple pronunciations for the names they made up. Some of them are silly. I mean, even they acknowledge it later, so I don't feel too bad. So again, Greyhawk, deities, and religion. Greyhawk religion is not... It's not simple. It is political, cultural, and regional. Unlike later settings where gods often feel mythic and distant, Greyhawk deities are structured, ethnically rooted, aligned but nuanced, actively shaping nations, and crucially, they were codified early. The formalization of the pantheon. Greyhawk gods were systematized in World of Greyhawk, fantasy world setting, and earlier expanded through articles in the Dragon magazine. So there was other expansion parts that came, through. Like, if you ever look for something from the past, there's a thing called Dragon magazine. It's really important to old school D&D because a lot of development, a lot of ideas, a lot of opinions end up in this magazine. And a lot of they put new rules out through this. And this means official because it's considered becoming straight from the designers. Rule changes, new ideas, options, stuff like this. So whenever you hear me talk about Dragon magazine, I want you to know how deeply connected to this it is. It's from the company. These are official changes. It's not like somebody writing with an opinion of what you could do with D&D. That's why they consider the work you see there as part of the development. When you see, say, a new edition come out, and some of the work where they said, here, do this, is now fully in the actual books to the new edition or the new printing, right? Okay, so, like I said, one of the first times TSR gave a setting its own integrated divine structure rather than generic myth borrowing. That alone makes Greyhawk religion foundational. So it's where they're designing something instead of just copying from the real world. This is pure fantasy in design and fun. Ethnic pantheons, religion as migration history. Greyhawk gods are not one unified pantheon. They are divided by cultural origin. Clan deities, ancient native gods of the land. Examples, Pilar, Bori, Nero. These feel primal. Oridian deities, imperial, organized, structured. Examples, Heronus, Hexter, Zilchus. These reflect knightly orders and feudal states. Sul deities. So these reflect knightly orders and feudal states. Sul deities, another group of deities, are more arcane, sometimes darker in tone. Examples, Ouijas, Cord. These tie the Sul Imperium catastrophic past. So these are tied to the sort of weird history of the Sul. Again, I say some things where you're just going to have to look more into that. The Sul is interesting. You don't need to know it all to understand Greyhawk, but it is worth mentioning out loud. So here are some things I don't think should be ignored. I put them in notes going just like, well, you're not really covering some of this stuff, but is it worth still noting in a way of just, for the people that do know the stuff, they'll understand that. For people that are new to Greyhawk, these are just, if you hear some things here and I don't give a full-on explanation later, please Write it down. Go look it up yourself. It's worth it. It is worth your time, but it's not the what you need to know to understand Greyhawk. Back Loonish deities are often more monotheistic in flavor. Examples: Allah Akbar, Al Akbar, sorry, Istas. These bring a different cosmology, like tone from a different tone from the Western Planets regions. This layered pantheon reflects migration history. Religion in Greyhawk mirrors geopolitics. So just understand how religion is so tied to politics. There is no separation at all. It's almost like it's considered the same thing, right? Like to have divine hands laid upon you as the rightful king or leader. So in that way, there is no separation. They are considered somewhat in the same vein. God's choosing religion. Alignment. Clear but not cartoonish. Greyhawk deities have alignments, but their churches vary in tone. For example, St. Cuthbert, lawful neutral, with good tendencies. His clergy can be stern reformers, fanatics, world protectors, same God, different expressions. Alignment defines cosmic position. Cultures define practice, meaning, look, the God might be this initially, lawful, neutral, leaning towards good, right? But a follower come along who's chaotic good and even sees the belief system in that different way. So it's like it's different sects of the same religion. That type of nuance is played in here or considered. So there's multiple different types of religious people for each god, potentially, right? Active divine presence. Unlike purely distant pantheons, demigods walk the world. Clerical magic is real and visible. Temples hold political sway. I ooze, though not a traditional god in early presentation, blurs divine and political authority. Religion is not background color, and it influences borders, wars, succession, and trade. Major religious power centers: the Pale, a theocratic state dedicated to Faltus, lawful neutral zeal, rigid orthodoxy, suspicion of arcane magic. Religion directly equals state power. Ferunde and Valuna, influenced by good aligned faiths like Hieronis and Ra, or Ra'u, depends on how you say that, but still pragmatic, still political. No realm is purely idealistic. Clerics are political actors, or clerics as political actors. In early AD&D design, clerics are not passive healers. They lead armies, govern provinces, influence kings, suppress heresy. Greyhawk supports this because religion is institutional. A high priest may rival a duke. That's how important their role is, or taken. They're not just some priests. Okay, Zug Tamoy, a corrupt faith. The temple of elemental evil shows the dark mirror of religion. Zug Tamoy. I know it sounds interesting. Zuggtmoy. Zug Tamoy, or Timoy. Zug Timoy represents false faith masked as doctrine. Greyhawk doesn't just present good churches, it shows cult infiltration, schism, religious decay. Faith can be stabilized or destabilized. Greyhawk religion is structured but not preachy, aligned but not simplistic, political but not purely theocratic. Rooted in culture, it avoids mythic epic destiny. Instead, it feels like a medieval Europe with real divine mechanics layered on top. Why Greyhawk religion feels grounded? Because it evolved from play. Clerics mattered mechanically, so they mattered socially. Spells like raise dead, commune, cure disease, change how societies function. Greyhawk implicitly accounts for that. Greyhawk religion isn't window dressing. It's a migration history, politics, and divine power wrapped together. Its gods aren't abstract. They have churches, land, influence, and agendas. And because the world is fragmented, religion fills power vacuums. When everything's breaking down, religion jumps in. Oh my, going through these notes. I swear some things can sound fine because I speak everything out loud before I do this. So I've already said all this out loud, but some I still comes out in a little feels messy sometimes because I'm reading. I'm not used to doing scripts, and that's something I'm still adjusting to with these streams. Is reading to you instead of just talking off the top of my head. Right? I feel more confident there. Like I can just show myself off more. But here I'm reading to you, so I hope this is as entertaining as can be, and more people interact, the more I'll react to it. No worries. So we're going to move on to the Castle Greyhawk, the original Mega Dungeon. I've covered Mega Dungeons. I've covered dungeons. If Greyhawk is the first true D&D world, then Castle Greyhawk is the beating heart of early D&D. Before nations, before box sets, before canon, there was a ruin on a hill outside a growing trade town, and underneath it, a death trap laboratory where the game itself evolved. The origin, 1972 to 1973, Castle Greyhawk began as Gary Gygax's home campaign dungeon, inspired in part by Dave Arnes's Blackmore experiments. But Gygax took it further. Where Blackmore was looser and more narrative, Greyhawk became structured, layered, competitive, escalating in difficulty. The dungeon wasn't static. It was designed to defeat players who got clever, and players responded in kind. The structure, a true mega dungeon, Castle Greyhawk reportedly had over a dozen primary levels, sub-levels, trick levels, theme levels, faction-controlled zones. Each deeper level increased lethality, magical weirdness, political complexity. It was not just room with monsters, it contained rival NPC adventuring parties, political intrigue underground, magical experiments, long-term evolving threats. This wasn't a module, it was an ecosystem. Robular, Mordecaian, and Real Consequences. One of the most important early players was Rob Kuntz, who played Robular. Robular famously entered the dungeon alone, released Iuz from imprisonment, changed the world's state permanently. This is key. The dungeon impacted the setting. The setting impacted the dungeon. Greyhawk was interconnected long before published campaign world was made, that we know about, called Greyhawk. The dungeon as a design laboratory. Castle Greyhawk is where many mechanics were stress tested before appearing in print. Spells, monsters, magic items, they were used at the table first. Names like Mordecaian, Big B, Tensor came directly from players. The dungeon functioned as a combat engine, a rule testing chamber, a campaign evolution machine. This was early AD&D's feels. This is why early AD&D feels dungeon first. Like it feels like it's made for the dungeon you're going to play in. Because it was, that's the truth. If it feels like it's made for the dungeon play, it's because, yeah, that's what it was made for. Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, our expectations have changed later. We have different expectations now what the game is and what we can do with it. But the early sort of experimenting was all like, we're making it to play in this dungeon gimmick. Like we build everything to help this, not to to bend this towards that, right? Castle Greyhawk was not heroic fantasy. It was competitive, lethal, tricky, trick heavy, puzzle orientated, unfair at times. Gygax believed in player skill over character skill, information as survival, consequences that stuck, not plot armor, not safety net, no plot armor, no balanced encounters. The dungeon did not scale to you, you scaled to it or died. So you could, it's like, just imagine this. You have somewhat progressed in the place of the dungeon. You could run downstairs right now and get to the next level. Or you could check out the stuff that maybe you haven't looked at yet. Well, the stuff that you haven't looked at might lead to the experience points you need to upgrade your characters. But if you run down to the next level, you're going to meet enemies where you're like, shit, we should have probably upgraded our characters before we got here. The game doesn't care where you're at, and it doesn't plan around you. It needs you to sort of learn this and plan around it. Castle, or at the end, yeah, that's the guy you meet at the end. Gygax's name pretty much backwards. You meet a certain guy at the end of the whole fucking dungeon if you get to the end of this dungeon. It's a funny thing. Okay. So you scale to it. You adjust to the actual place. It's not made to make sure that you can go through and still make your way through. It's not a game in that sense. It's all about survival. So in a way, it is a game, because it's about survival. Things that might be considered easier or okay in other games to do. This is a game where it says, no, that's the exact thing that we're going to trip you up on, right? Why it mattered? Why it was never fully published. TSR never released the original home version of Castle Greyhawk in an authentic form. Why? Because it was massive. It was constantly evolving. It relied on table knowledge. It contained personal campaign material. Later TSR products referenced it. Some parody material was published, but the real Castle Greyhawk remains largely legendary. What we know comes from interviews, articles, and partial reconstructions. Castle Greyhawk versus later mega dungeons. Later mega dungeons are often emphasize story arcs, thematic cohesion, and counterbalance. Castle Greyhawk emphasized survival, escalation, open-ended risk, as I'm telling you, factional play. It was closer to strategic war game underground than a novel. So this is where it's still the roots of wargaming mindset and logistics are still there for the way this was viewed or approached. The castle above the dungeon that people forgot. The castle itself mattered. Political seat near the free city. Adventurer magnet. Economic engine. So it was, let me start this part again. The castle above the dungeon. People forgot. The castle itself mattered. Political seat near the free city. That's where it is. Adventurer magnet. Economic engine. This is the thing. It's drawing people. It's going to make the place money. The ruins became a proving ground. This is what creates D&D. This is the whole mindset comes from this. So it's a shame we've never seen the thing in its full glory. I'll be real. A rite of passage, a place where reputations were built or destroyed. Castle Greyhawk represents the rawest form of D&D. Yup, Castle Greyhawk represents the rawest form of Dungeons and Dragons. The fusion of wargaming and fantasy. Player-driven world impacts. Player-driven world impact. So player has real impact on the world. Dungeon-first campaign design. So focused on that dungeon play. Everything that later TSR worlds have published and refined began here. This was not setting built for a fiction. It was built to test players. That's yeah. Castle Greyhawk doesn't totally does the Shapiro thing, right? Facts over your feelings, definitely. I agree. Castle Greyhawk is not just a dungeon, it is the origins of the mega dungeon concept, the birthplace of many iconic spells and NPCs. It's where AD&D mechanics harden, the first true long-form sandbox. If you want to understand Greyhawk as a world, you must understand it begins underground. So true, Greyhawk begins underground. That is real. The Temple of Elemental Evil. So we just covered an important mega dungeon, but we're going to cover some other stuff that's in the same vein. The Temple of Elemental Evil. If Castle Greyhawk is the origin point of D&D dungeon design, the Temple of Elemental Evil is where TSR fused regional politics, religious corruption, dungeon ecology, factional intrigue into one of the most important Greyhawk sagas ever published. The beginning, Hamlet, 1979. It starts with the village of Hamlet, T1, designed by Gary Gygax. Hamlet is not just a starter village; it is it's a reconstruction town. Years earlier, the temple rose nearby and was defeated by Ferunde, Valuna, local forces. Now the region is uneasy. The moat house ruined outside town. The moat house ruins outside of the town are there to be probed. Test site for cult resurgence. So it's cults are going to these places. Things are coming out of nowhere. And this is early TSR at its best. Small surface, deep rot underneath. So it's a small area, but it is attracting bad people and bad things. That's the idea, right? The hint of the the full temple of elemental evil, T1 to T4, massive dungeon complex with multiple elemental factions, clerical hierarchies, secret alliances, eternal rivalries, demonic influence. This is not just a kick in the door, it's infiltration, intelligence gathering, and political manipulation underground. The villain structure. At its core, the temple worships Zug Timoy, as I said, a demon lord imprisoned beneath the temple, but she's not operating alone. The cult is divided into Earth faction, Air faction, Fire faction, Water faction. Earth faction has its own high priest, its own troops, its own ambition. They cooperate outwardly, they compete eternally. This layered structure makes the temple feel alive. Sorry. The political context in Flaunes. The temple sits in a pressure zone between Ferunde, Valuna, the Wild Coast. It represents a destabilizing force near major powers. Apologize. Okay. The cult has connections to broader evil networks tied indirectly to northern threats like IOOs. The temple isn't random evil, it's part of a regional pattern. Greyhawk does not isolate its villains. Why it's structurally important, the Temple of Elemental Evil. It connects early dungeon design to fully realized geopolitical setting play. So this is, in a way, it's starting to connect the dots for what will lead to, ironically, non-dungeon play. A town with factions, Hamlet. A ruin with hidden with hidden agents, that moat house. A mega dungeon with political layers, the temple. That structure became a template for future TSR adventure design. So it's not just all gameplay in the dungeon. Now there's the idea is we provide a town for you to do some other things. We provide another area to cause some weird interactions outside of the dungeon. And then we provide a dungeon. So it's now more than just you start in the dungeon. Now there's this whole other area, but in my opinion, this is opinion, I think the Hamlet ends up leading to the influence of doing stuff outside of the dungeon. Like it's realizing you can role play here in the town. And a lot of that will end up leading outside of the dungeon and not just keep people in the dungeon. I'm just saying. So in a way, they're discovering something, but they're discovering there's a bigger game without realizing it. And they're discovering that by just adding some small element that they think is meant to help them, help them do some other things. Okay. Tone and philosophy. The temple is not heroic fantasy. It is corruption disguised as religion. It's a power vacuum. Ambition masked as faith. The cult doesn't scream evil. It infiltrates quietly. That subtly makes it dangerous. So it's a cult that is coming into this area and infiltrating what is happening, right? And that's what you're really dealing with, is something it's espionage in the world of religion. Spies, thieves. Ironically. Dungeon ecology. What makes the temple old school strong? It contains monsters allied by faction, mercenaries, traitors, prisoners, secret passages, multiple entry points. Players can negotiate, manipulate factions, turn priests against each other, avoid full frontal assault. It rewards intelligence over brute force. It's a lot of dungeon play right there. Patience, don't go running in like a fool, and the game will reward you for cautious play like that when you're paying attention and playing smart. Why it's peak TSR Greyhawk. The temple works because it respects player agency. Nowadays, people, like, what player agency meant back in the day is, it's somewhat what you expect. But you got to remember, when they say player agency back in the day, a lot of aspects that we talk about role playing that wasn't even considered at the time. So they're saying some freedom, like the DM can't move your character into a fight. Like you have control over your character in that sense, right? Hence, it respects player agency. It embeds itself in regional politics. It reflects Greyhawk's balance of good versus destabilizing evil. Again, that infiltrating evil, the cult. It feels like something that could plausibly rise again if neglected. It's not apocalyptic doom. It's reoccurring corruption. That's very Greyhawk. So it's something that will keep coming back if you're not putting pressure on to stop it from happening. And it sort of means you can never really stop it. But it's like it will keep resurfacing if you don't keep putting pressure. The Temple of Elemental Evil isn't just a dungeon. It's a religious insurgency with political roots. It sits in the shadow of major kingdoms and tests their resolve. It shows how Greyhawk handles evil, not as spectacle, but as rot. Underneath, boom. And that's a lot of future D&D is sort of that mindset too, with the rot stuff and evil. Okay, all right. So we've gotten to it, and we're going to talk about I ooze now. Why I ooze matters. Pronounced 3 different ways that I know of: e-ooze, I ooze like me, or a-ooze. I say I ooze. I ooze it's I-U-Z. I-U-Z, you know what I mean? So I say I ooze is Greyhawk's geopolitical disruptor. You don't need him to be the final boss of the campaign. Just existing makes kingdoms behave differently. Just existing, him existing, makes people behave in a certain way. Militarize borders, form alliances, fund adventures, tolerate questionable good causes, etc. It makes people willing to act in certain ways because of what I-ooze brings to the table. Like they'll break their own principles to take him down, chase the devil to the corner, break all the rules, and then what? 1980, mentioned in the World of Greyhawk folio, Lord of Evil, type presence. As one of the few named powers early on, 1982. So let me say that again. 1980, mentioned in the World of Greyhawk folio, Lord of Evil type presence as one of the few named powers early on. So early on, they're already noting this guy. He's already important. By 1982, Gygax expands Greyhawk demigods deities via Dragon Magazine issue 67, Deities and Demigods of the World of Greyhawk articles. Big deal for giving I-Ooze shape. 1983 World of Greyhawk box set gives broader setting context and makes I-Ooze a fixed piece on the map. So now he is for sure there. He's a solid figure in the story. 1985, I-Ooze is tied into the big evil web around T1 to T4 Temple of Elemental Evil. Even when he's not front and center, he's part of the regional shadow. 1992 to 1993, late TSR Greyhawk, Carl Sargent era goes hard. From the Ashes plus WGR5, I-Ooze the Evil, and WGR6, City of the Skulls turn Northern Menace into a detailed regime you can run adventures inside. So basically what happens is they turn his domain into a place where you could go and mess about, actually play in. It's all built around this, which is around the Temple of Elemental Evil. But yeah, by 1992, 1993, late TSR Greyhawk, Carl Sargent era goes hard. From the Ashes. So these are just different adventures where you can dive into the I-Ooze stuff. Yeah. Some of this stuff just notes are weird. That's your official TSR arc right there. That's it. Hint, divine, write-up, map reality, regional influence, fully realized tyranny. So I-Ooze is just someone who's he's like part god. He has immense powers, and it's detailed out. He's a sort of fixed god from the start. The land of I-Ooze is a dark and evil place. Ogre and anti-paladin came from that place. Yeah. But they want to make him a big issue. He becomes a centerpiece of Greyhawk at one point, and he affects everything. Like, he affects everything, but in a good way. It's all good for what we do. The concept demigod as state. This is I-Ooze. Greyhawk does something special with I-Ooze. He's not just a god in the sky. He's not just a king on a throne. He's a divine tyrant who rules territory. That creates a setting where diplomacy and warfare aren't only human problems. Neighboring realms must plan around humanoid armies backed by a divine figure. Priest whose god is physically present. A capital that functions like an occupied nightmare city. That's later in TSR. I-Ooze as a product of a Mega Dungeon era. So I-Ooze as a product of the Mega Dungeon era. In early Greyhawk play culture, the world grows out of table consequences. That's why I-Ooze's mythology has so much campaign scar tissue. So there's a lot of interacting with the actual god through gameplay, like freeing him, like having players actually have their characters go in and free him at one point, which is Robert Kuntz's character, Rob Lee, frees I-Ooze. That's why he becomes something special, especially to the people that designed it. He feels like something the setting suffered, not something an author planned. So it's like the setting, we're going to bring this guy in to just screw with you, but it's not like something, a character you would put into the story, right? It's not from the sense of storytelling. It's more from the, I need a thing for a game. So it's all about the challenge. A frontier of raids, kidnapping, slave taking, a place that corrupts politics and good kingdoms. Hard choices, a justification why all adventurers keep getting hired. So much is just damaging in this place. So, and that's, I'm talking about this. So material leans into that by treating I-Ooze's land as a frontier of raids, kidnapping, slave taking, a place that corrupts politics and good kingdoms, hard choices, a justification for why adventurers keep getting hired. The Northern Pressure System. How to explain it? Well, I'll put it this way. The buffer zone effect. This is where we're going to go with it. So I had a few choices here, and I have a few notes on where I could take this, and I said decide during stream. So I'm going to go with the buffer zone effect. Realms near IOs, classic example for Unday Shield lands, are forced into fortified borders. So anybody near him automatically take him as threat, and that's pressure right away. So they got to fortify their borders to IOs. Standing forces, expensive, rare, and feudal fantasy, alliance politics, and church influence. The raid economy. Even when he isn't conquering, the region stays unstable because raids produce captive loot resources. Raids force, reprisal. Reprisals escalate into border wars. So Iuz's raids, when I say about raids and taking slaves and everything, that's what his land would do. It would bleed over into these other places. They would raid into the foreign lands and whatnot, and they'd have to secure their borders to stop these raids. If not, they would continue. And it would get taken slaves, and it was all the raid economy. That's what you would call it. It's almost like it's just stealing. Even when he isn't conquering, the region stays unstable because, again, raids produce captives, loot, and resources. Raids force reprisals, like I said, reprisals escalate into border wars. The adventure as policy effect. This is very Greyhawk. Rulers can openly invade a demigod's domain without huge risk. So they fund deniable assets, adventurers, spies, special missions. That's why the WGR6, this is what they name some of their modules. They put these numbers on them, and it's a city of skulls works as a concept. Infiltration, espionage, in an enemy capital. So it's if you go and fuck with IOs, you're not going to piss off your friends. That's what they mean. There's less risk, even though he's doing the raids. It's almost like there's less political risk to go fuck with him at the same time. So there's a lot of pushback and not just wars at the thing, but constant friction. It's meant to be that way to produce things for what we're doing. Excuses, games, ideas. Late TSR, IOs becomes a full regime you can campaign against. So now it becomes a full actual place with an army, and now you can really, really force against it. IO's domain isn't vague. Evil North. IO's domain isn't vague Evil North anymore. It's operational state with a terrifying capital. Daraka, City of Skulls vibe. Internal factions, priests, fiends, humanoids, legions, politics by terror. Adventurer hooks that are military plus espionage plus rescue ops, not just dungeon crawls. That shift is important for your for how this goes down, because it shows how Greyhawk evolved from home campaign threats into publishable geopolitical evil without turning into novel lore. So what I mean is, this character, this Ius guy, is made for gameplay and what you need for him. He ends up developing all this political pressure and all that without you trying to bring him up as some type of storytelling device, right? So it's creating stuff, I guess, you might want for storytelling, period, or stuff like that, but it's developed through gameplay and for the game, for what's going down politically in the world, which again is all about more development. That's why it feels like a referee's world, a dungeon master's world, more than, say, a novelist trying to tell a story with the world, right? It's more effective for what we do with the game. That's what I would say. That's what TSR, or at least Gary, believed. I ooze is Greyhawk's thermostat. When Greyhawk needs the world to feel dangerous, it doesn't drop a meteor. It turns the dial up on IO's raids, border wars, priests, kidnappings, and pressure on every good kingdom nearby. Okay, so this is important. This is called the Circle of Eight. Greyhawk Shadow Stabilizers. If the city of Greyhawk is the economic hub of Flawness, the Circle of Eight is its arcane pressure valve. They are not rulers, they are not priests, they are not conquerors. They are something far more Greyhawk, power brokers who intervene to prevent the world from tipping too far in any one direction. Origin, Mordecaian's philosophy. The circle revolves around one figure, Mordecaian. Originally a player character in Gygax's home campaign, Mordecaian embodies a core Greyhawk idea. Balance is more important than virtue. He is not a paladin. He is not a tyrant. He's not a saint. He believes extreme destabilizes civilization. Extremes destabilize civilization. So never be too extreme. He's a moderate. Good and evil must counterweight each other. Balance. No empire should dominate the Flawness. None. Again, balance. This isn't cosmic balance like Moorcock. It's geopolitical balance that Mordecaian wants. The members. Though membership shifted over time, the iconic TSR-era circle included Mordecaian, Bigby, Tensor, Odaluk, Rary, Dramij, Nistal, Otto. Notice something? Most of those names are attached to spells. They weren't abstract war characters, they were mechanical fingerprints on early play. What makes them a shadow power? They do not rule a territory, they manipulate events, advise rulers, intervene discreetly, destroy destabilizing threats. Think of them as an arcane intelligence council. If Ayuz grows too strong, they move pieces. If Eraday collapses too fast, they apply pressure elsewhere. If demonic cults rise, they erase them. They operate through agents, magical surveillance, selective adventurer support. They are not omnipotent. They're not just good people. That's a joke. But they're not just good people. They're aware of how this all works. There's a neutral aim with what they do. Moral ambiguity. This is the key for the stream. So I made a little note to myself. This is key. The circle is not purely good. Tensor leans more heroic. Mordecaian leans pragmatic, like in that area. And Rary eventually betrays them. So there is going to be betrayal in the circle. Their guiding ethic is stability over righteousness. They may allow a cruel ruler to remain if removing him would cause continental war. That is very Greyhawk. So they'll leave the bad guy in place if that keeps things stable as it is. That's a balance factor. Again, this is where they're more neutral than you would say they are good. The Rary betrayal. Or Rary, however you pronounce it. They pronounce it several different ways. One of the biggest TSR Greyhawk moments is his betrayal of the circle. This fractures the illusion of wizard unity. It proves, even those who guard balance can fall to ambition. The circle is powerful, but not immune to eternal collapse. The vulnerability makes them believable, realistic. He ends up betraying them. Relationship to the city of Greyhawk. They are not the city government, but they influence it. Greyhawk tolerates them because they defend against threats. Their presence attracts magical prestige. They quietly stabilize the region. The city's political oligarchy handles trade. The circle handles arcane balance. Two separate power layers. So two separate power layers. It's you need the oligarchy for this, you need that for that. And this is more Greyhawk realism and balance in the mindset of the city, the place, everything. How they different from later wizard cancels. Later fantasy settings often portray wizard cancels as bureaucratic, academic. The Circle of Eight is none of those. They are strategic, selective, interventionist, minimalist in exposure. They do not legislate magic, they manage consequences. Why they matter structurally. The Circle serves three crucial setting functions. Prevent total villain dominance, for my ooze. Prevents total heroic consolidation. So it's mercenaries need work everywhere. So there's a balance to making sure not everything is just as it is. There's an equal balance to good and evil. And this means you need what I would call, how can I say, a bit thinning out of certain characteristics like heroic stuff. Justifies why the flawness stays fragmented. Without them, one faction might plausibly conquer everything. With them, power remains distributed. So it's work distributed, power distributed, control and authority. It's to make sure it's not all in one place, because if you put everything in one place, all means in one place, it degrades everything else and makes it sour. That leads you to war. This is the idea, right? Greyhawk remains unstable, but not destroyed. So that's there's always a bit of instability while there's some maintaining a balance so it doesn't blow up. So it's not like perfect balance. It's balance to make sure the keg doesn't explode. The Circle of Eight is not a ruling body. It's a pressure regulator. When empires grow too strong or demons rise too high, they adjust the board. They don't want good to win. They don't want evil to win. They want the game to continue. That's very old school in spirit. So in a way, it's like this will continue being the place where you can adventure and do things forever. That's Greyhawk, right? That's the idea. It's everything is managed not to bring something to an end or to create something that doesn't relate to what you're doing. It's always, how do we maintain that world so you can keep doing modules and story and play through Greyhawk? What supports that you're doing, the adventure of the module to play? That's what we want this world to do. And Greyhawk is built from the ground up to be exactly that, something that does that. Now, Greyhawk then versus Greyhawk later. So Greyhawk from the start versus Greyhawk later. How did Greyhawk change from Gygax's early campaign world into the late TSR version that existed when TSR stopped developing it? Phase 1, the Gygax era, 1970s to 1985. This is Greyhawk at its first, what it first became. Tone, dungeon first. Player driven. Politically sketched, not overwritten. Open sandbox. Greyhawk in this era is a strategic framework, a DM's toolkit, a continent in a Cold War tension, a setting built to be used, not read like fiction. It's not what it's there for. It's not there to tell you the story. It's there to be used to play the game and have a story emerge from that. The World of Greyhawk fantasy world setting in 1983 box set reflects this. They are concise. Nation entries are short. Histories are summarized. Hooks are implied. Nothing is forced. Political climate, the Great Kingdom is corrupt, but intact. Iuz is dangerous, but contained. Ferunde and Valuna stand strong. Borders are tense, but stable. It's a powder keg that has not yet exploded. It's meant to be that way, on that edge, to create the stories, the modules, to everything that we get from it. Philosophy. The early design goal. Give DM structure without dictating events. Greyhawk felt like a living campaign that could go on in any direction. That was intentional. The transitional period, post-Gygax, mid-late 1980s. After Gygax leaves TSR in 1985, Greyhawk continues, but the tone steadily shifts. The setting becomes more adventure product driven, moves towards stronger narrative arcs, expands in regional detail, but it's still recognizable as Greyhawk. This era is less about intervention and more about consolidation. Greyhawk Wars era, early 1990s. This is the biggest tonal shift. Greyhawk Wars reshaped the political map. Then comes From the Ashes, written primarily by Carl Sargent. This is Greyhawk after sort of like something like apocalyptic, a catastrophic event has occurred. What changed? The Cold War explodes. IOOS expands aggressively. The Shield lands collapse. Iran weakens severely. Borders redraw violently for war. Balanced tension of early Greyhawk becomes open warfare. So what was meant to be there to help you tell a story is now being used for something else, right? Parts of me would say this is unnecessary, but this is what they wanted. Darker tone from the Ashes presents a war-torn flawness. Refugees, broken alliances, economic strain, military desperation. Early Greyhawk, stable tension. Later TSR Greyhawk, past Gygax, post-war realism. That's what it becomes. It becomes grimier, less sandbox neutral, more reactive. The Circle of Eight reset. The Circle of Eight is largely wiped out and restructured. This symbolically matters. The balanced managers fail. The world destabilizes. This is a shift. It's a big shift. So it's a breakdown of the Circle of Eight. What stayed consistent? Despite the changes, several core traits remained intact through TSR's end. No single dominant empire. Political fragmentation. Alignment influencing geopolitics. Religion tied to culture. Adventurers as key agents of change. Even in From the Ashes, Greyhawk is still not epic high fantasy. It remains grounded. The core difference. Sandbox versus narrative momentum early Greyhawk. So this is early Greyhawk. Open-ended, DM-driven, politically balanced, lightly detailed, dungeon-centric, neutral stage for play. Now late TSR, this is late Greyhawk. Event-driven, Greyhawk Wars. More detailed regional breakdowns, darker atmosphere, power vacuums emphasized, balance disrupted, setting moved from here's the board to here's what just happened to the board. Was it still Greyhawk in the later? Yes. Yeah. But it was no longer the untouched strategic sandbox of 1983. That's what changed. It just, I'd rather go back to the 1983 box set, personally. It had and that's an opinion. It had history imposed on it. It had trauma. It had momentum. That's real transformation. So it was changed. They changed it later. It's no doubt. Not a big fan of the changes later. Personal opinion. Early Greyhawk was a living campaign framework. Stable, tense, open. Late TSR Greyhawk was war, scarred continent, fractured, reactive, darker. The bones stayed the same. The atmosphere changed. Hour and 30 minutes. I'm sorry. Some of the notes I take on some of the stuff, some of the names, here's what screws me up. It messes me up when you're trying to speak pretty clearly. I get to certain names or certain things like notes where I'm like, okay, so how do I say that? Like, I remember reading this a million times. I never really had to say this out loud. How do you say certain things? There's a ton of words that break my brain when I get to them. And then some parts where it's just like going through the details of what they said. And I want to copy some of what they exactly said about something, but the way they said it, the way they was strange, just strange. The way they deliver it is strange. And I hope I deliver most of it pretty good. I think I got all the details down that you really want to know if you want to know Greyhawk. And there's so much more. The Greyhawk could be like a 10-hour stream. Greyhawk versus the Realms. What you say you? Well, at the end, see, I'm doing Greyhawk in all these worlds, and people are going to feel like I left things out or I didn't deliver certain things cleanly. I am doing what I call sort of like a makeup, like a several makeup streams for certain topics, like the worlds. At the end, when I feel like I'm done doing all the settings I'm doing for this year, I'm going to do before the end of the year, I'm doing a makeup stream where it's going back to Ravenloft and going, well, what didn't I cover? Oh, Gary D20 Games from X. Howdy, my friend. How you doing? I just got to the end pretty much of the script for Greyhawk. All right. I don't know how much you got to see of this or you're just getting here. You always rewind later and watch the entire thing. But yeah, I just covered Greyhawk. This Saturday is Diablo 2. Now, there's a 3rd edition version called To Hell and Back made for Diablo 2 for D&D, a D&D setting game. But originally, they were making a version of it. And I don't know the name off the top of my head, but I have it in my notes somewhere. It's a name for, they started off making an AD&D 2nd edition Diablo 2 game. And because TSR was sold to Wizards, they ended up changing the 3rd edition. I'm going to cover that this Saturday because every time I ask people, do you know there's a Diablo 2 D&D thing? Like, no. I'm like, so a lot of you don't know about it. I'm like, well, that's good. That means I can cover something you probably haven't heard much about. That's going to be cool. I'm also going to do on the same stream, because that's only so much of that, is the Council of Worms, right? Oh, yeah, sometimes it gets posted a little late. I don't know. YouTube is sometimes it's nice to me with this stuff. Sometimes it's not. The Council of Worms is where you can actually, they used to say like, man, it'd be so cool if we could like play a dragon or something. Well, old school D&D actually had something like that, which is the Council of Worms, where you could play a dragon, and they had an entire aging system all made so you can actually play a dragon and, upgrade through time, like, stuff like this. It's pretty cool. I look forward to that. And then it's soon going to be Spelljammer. I'm doing the last couple of streams I'll do before March 15th. Gary, I'll be on, if you know DM Bloodworth, I'll be on his channel for March 15th. But the 2 streams I do before that are free. Will be Star Frontier, Vampires of the Masquerade, and Heroes Unlimited. So if you like the old school stuff, you can be around for that stuff. It would probably be a lot easier and better than Greyhawk, because Greyhawk said so many things I had to. I myself had a hard time understanding some of the stuff, but it was like, this is the statements they left behind. Like, I want to make sure it's all fact-based. So I'm just trying to get out what they exactly said, right? Just to make sure I'm not adding any whim to that, because it's all fact-based stuff I'm covering this year. So I'm happy about tonight. A little weird, but okay with the outcome. Plus, it's like an hour and 30 minutes in. So, Gary, thanks for showing up, man. I don't know if you're already subbed to the channel or not, but appreciate it. If you want to sub, if you like this stream, the deal. If you like any of the stuff, like what you like, dislike what you don't like. Stay sub, though. You can still watch your content. I stream every week now, mainly Sundays. I give myself a break on certain days. Like I'll do Tuesdays or Thursdays or certain days of the week if I have the time. I don't mind doing Tuesdays occasionally. Main day is Sunday, but I get some free time. So I've been busy. I'm going to keep myself busy with these streams for a while, probably for a couple months. Then I got to do some work, so we'll cut back down to 1 stream a week. My main night is meant to be Sunday, but I've been streaming a lot. I'm doing an interview March 7th on this, Gary and Steven, with a guy named GM Cody. Has a YouTube channel and everything. I got a video up on that. You can check out his channel. GM Cody, pretty wise guy, has experience with wargaming, D&D, all kinds of other tabletop role-playing games. So it's going to be like, maybe an hour or 2 with him. I don't think it would be like a 4-hour talk like I have with Max Liao, but it will be a couple hours at the very least, and I'll have a bunch of questions to ask him. I already got questions, but I'm going to watch some more of his content and just see what else he has to say so I can know what I want to ask him about. And I want to make sure you don't want to bring people on and ask them something where they might get like, never thought. So I want to make sure I'm listening to things he says, especially if he repeats certain things. Like, this is a stance he has. Well, then I know he's going to know that one. All right, I'm going to ask him about that detail. All right. Because I know that means he's going to be comfortable talking about that. I can ask him that and get the on the spot question answer, right? To me, it's important what you ask and how you go about having the conversations with people, because the idea is to make it an entertaining time that we talk for you guys watching, right? So it doesn't help me or him if I'm asking questions which has him out there wondering what to say, right? So I'm trying to make sure I come up with questions for every guest that comes on where it's like, I think if I ask that or say it in a certain way, I'll get a good response. Like that will feed into that guy saying a lot more, right? Yeah, it was good. Official questions, I probably got around 5 to him over the 4 hours, but then he offers a lot of information that so some of the questions that I never asked got answered in certain ways, and then just other things. He's such an open talker that he can bring up things I wouldn't even think to ask him. So there's a lot of good stuff there. But I got some questions I asked him. We had a good 4 hours. With any, like when I had a RPG grandma on. Oh geez, like she's the only one that I could say I got down to where there was more questions asked of her than John Clement or Max. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same with GM Cody, because GM Cody can talk. So and I got to let that go, right? I want him to talk. So if I ask him a question, that's going to get me a few minutes. Okay, that means maybe less questions will be asked, but it just means for the whole 2 hours that we talk or whatever, you're getting him in, entertaining, so I don't mind that. If whatever produces the fun is what I'm looking for. Because Max was like, sorry if you didn't get to ask me all the questions. I'm like, there was no sorry, dude. We got to talk and have fun for 4 hours. It was no problem. So yeah, just trying to figure out these guys. Some of the guys I already know things to ask them. A guy like Jim Cody, I like the way he talks, but it's one of these things where I never really planned to interview him. So it's one of these where I'm just checking out some of his content. He seems like he knows his shit, right? So I'm happy with that. And again, I'm going to be on with DM Bloodworth on his channel, not on this one, though I'll put a link up to that in the community section of my channel, so you can find the actual place where I'll be streaming with DM Bloodworth. He does this open mic night. I got all my Sunday. It's on Sundays. All my Sundays are scheduled right up to the 15th, so I given him the 15th. Right? I was like, oh, I'm going to take a break on the 15th. Now I'm not taking a break on the 15th. I'm going to be on my TM Bloodworth. But it's okay. It's okay. I'll probably take a more of a week. Like that week, I probably won't be doing my like a Tuesday or Thursday stream, or even Saturday, but I'll be doing Sunday, of course. And again, come March 1st, I will extend out the schedule so you can see what I'm doing after the 15th, which is covering more OSR stuff, more settings at one point, other games. I am doing Alternity on the 7th because I'm doing the interview with GM Cody, so I will make up for that. I'll schedule to cover Alternity before the end of March. Alternity is another odd, old school game, right? Well, it's 9:30 p.m. my time right now, just say, like 9:31, -4 GMT Atlantic time zone. So whatever time it is for you, it's 9:30 pretty much for me. So that's my time. And I start at 8 o'clock. So tonight was like pretty much an hour and a half. All right. So I start at 8 o'clock for these streams. Now, for the interview for March 7th, this is unique. That will start an hour early. So all my streams are 8 o'clock, just to let you guys know. If I do it Thursday night, it's 8. Saturday, it's 8. Sunday, it's 8. Always the same time. The exception would be on March 7th, me and GM Cody will start at 7 o'clock my time, which is an hour earlier than usual, right? So there you go. That's the schedule. I don't know where you are, Gary. Maybe you're somewhere 4 hours ahead or 4 hours behind me or something. I get some people that really love my stuff, but our hours are so different. It's funny. It's funny they have to watch my stuff at a completely different time. Some of them can't be here live, right? Which is cool. It's how we still get to interact. They still get to take part with my content. But 7 o'clock for the interview. So I start at 8 o'clock every night, my time, 8 p.m. It's going to be 7 p.m. for March 7th. And right now, again, my time is 9:30 p.m. If you guys are trying to equal out your time, -4 GMT Atlantic. There you go. Look it up on your time thing. You'll see what I mean. All right. All right. Well, okay. Sorry, Gary, you're getting here so late, dude. I'm right at the end. Right. So love you. I appreciate you getting here. I hope you do rewind, check out the stream for what it is, and check out some of the other stuff. Oh, don't worry about it. I expect most of that, and I'll notice out some viewers where I might have like one person talking or a few people here. It's totally cool, man. Drink your tea, have your coffee, paint your miniatures, work on your stuff. That's exactly the type of people I'm performing for. So, in one way, I don't mind people not reacting. If you notice, I'm pretty comfortable just talking with very little, but hey, it's nice, right? When it's there. Okay, guys. I love you. Talk to you soon.